Enforcement Committee meeting. First, before we start, I'd like to call Joan Hancock, the board chair, for comments.
Thank you, Ed. Good afternoon, committee and members of the public. On behalf of the Enforcement Committee, actually on behalf of the board, I would like to ask the Enforcement Committee if we could take this time to remember a good friend to the board, Sam Abdulaziz, and dedicate this committee meeting in his honor. Sam was a friend of the board. He was a mentor to all of us that sat on the board and committees. He is going to be sorely missed. He passed away recently. Sam was a true lion in the legal field and is known up and down the state as probably the greatest legal mind in the field of construction law. Known to many of us personally, he was a very personable guy. He was very approachable, easy to talk to. He spoke in layperson's terms. He attended many of our meetings, if not most of them, and we will miss him. The board will plan a remembrance for Sam to be held at our next board meeting in Norwalk on December 10th. And if you need information about that, you can call the registrar. I think that's all I have to say at this point, but I would like to take the next few moments to just have a moment of silence in memory of Sam Abdulaziz. Thank you. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Joan, for that presentation. And now we will commence our Enforcement Committee meeting of the Contractor State License Board. I'm Ed Lang, Enforcement Chair. Will the October 21st, 2013 meeting of the Contractor State License Board and Enforcement Committee come to order? Only board members who are members of the committee may sit at the table. Other board members who are in attendance must observe from the audience. If a quorum of the board is present, those members who are observing cannot participate in the discussion. We will now do committee members and staff introduction. Identification by members of the public is voluntary. So let's start on my left, going around here.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kurt Hepler. I'm the new appointed counsel to the Contractors State Licensing Board. Don Cheng is off today, and I kind of feel like the guy playing behind Cal Ripke. You guys have had competent legal service for quite some time, so I welcome the opportunity and the challenge, so thank you.
Welcome.
It's only 29 years.
Good afternoon. My name is Humana Saini. I'm a prosecutor with the Riverside County District Attorney's Office, and I've been invited here to speak on behalf of some of the law enforcement issues.
Bruce Rust, board member.
Anna Rodriguez, enforcement staff.
Bob Lamb, board member.
David Fote, Chief of Enforcement.
Ed Lang, board member.
John O'Rourke, board member.
Cindy Christensen, Chief Deputy Registrar.
Linda Clifford, board member.
Frank Shutter, board member.
Steve Sands, Registrar.
We may continue around the first row. Okay.
Joan Hancock, board member.
Kevin Albanese, board member.
Dave Diaz, board member.
Chris Walker, Cal Smackman.
Larry Baxter, Northwest Polls, Reading, California.
Raju Shah, CSLB IT.
Michael Collins, CSLB IT.
Keith Kuhn, CSLB IT.
Laura Zuniga, CSLB staff.
Nancy Springer, board member.
Joseph Martinez, CSLB enforcement.
Annette Groden, Contractors License Services.
Daniel Cohen, Television Education.
Mark Bussey, CSLB Swift.
Christine Lally, Department of Consumer Affairs.
Steve Green, Public Affairs Office.
Helen Gagwell, Public Affairs Office.
Carl Barr, Consumer Affairs. Mary Roach, Contractor State License Services.
Brad Beatty, California Professional Association of Specialty Contractors, known as CalPAS.
Karen Robinson, Chief of Licensing, CSLB. Marcel Diaz, CSLB Swift.
CSLB, enforcement representative.
Gene Pate, Inspector, Marin County District Attorney's Office.
Mike Miller, Inspector, Marin County DA.
Chris Lindholm, investigator, Colorado County DA.
John McCallum, CSLB enforcement.
Christina Delvin, Enforcement.
Scott Weber, CSLB enforcement.
Connie Bovee, CSLB Enforcement.
Wood Robinson, CSLB Enforcement.
Doug Galbraith, CSLB enforcement. Hal Conaghy, consumer affairs.
Phil Bermuda.
Rick Pierce, basic crafts.
Okay. Thank you. I know, Rick, you didn't. Oh, okay, good. Okay, let's go to our packet. Agenda item B. This item is provided for public comments pertaining to items on the agenda as well as item not on the agenda. However, the committee cannot take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Are there any individual that wish to address the committee at this time?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Brad Deedy. I'm the Executive Director for CalPASC, the California Professional Association of Specialty Contractors, and I just wanted to take 30 seconds to come up and pay some recognition to the enforcement efforts by the CSLB. Over the past 3 years or so, 3 or 4 years, our organization, which is made up of both signatory and non-signatory trade contractors all across the state of all different kinds of trades in both residential and commercial, we began working with the CSLB and other state agencies and asking the state agencies to collaborate more with one another to focus on catching the serial and flagrant violators. And I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the CSLB because this agency has been one of the best at taking those steps to cross bounds with other state agencies rather than just generally conduct sweeps and really focus on catching the cheaters in construction, and we appreciate that. And might I add that it's encouraging to hear district attorney representatives here in the room today as well, both in the audience and up here at the table. And there are other county DAs that we see getting more involved with the CSLB around the state also, and it's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad, for bringing those comments to the committee today.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Oh, please.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Jose Mejia with the Labor State Council. We've been working with the underground economy efforts for a number of years. The underground economy, obviously, we all know, has been a major problem in the state, not only in this particular industry, but just all industries as a whole. The licensed sports efforts, I should say their aggressive efforts in this arena has been compared to none. We have been hosting underground economy breakfast meetings when we bring all the task force together that was put together initially by executive order originally from Governor Pete Wilson, and then by statute 1 year after that, which brings together a variety of state agencies. And I want this to be known that, once again, the efforts undertaken by the enforcement element of License Board is critical. You have no idea what impact it makes not only to this industry, but again, to the consumers at large. We have various examples throughout the years, obviously, where it's been the efforts created by this has been shown, the sting operations, and I could go on the various entities that have been part of this whole enforcement efforts with the License Board. We continue to hold our breakfast meetings. We bring all these people together once again, but it's always the License Board that has taken an aggressive lead, no matter what the efforts may be in the past or what's coming up in the future. I've had the great pleasure of meeting or having a slight conversation with Agent Secretary Ana Caballero earlier this week on these efforts, and she has assured me that she supports these efforts, quite frankly, and I want to express to her, obviously, how thankful we are, not only as an industry or as a labor organization that I represent, but I think as a whole that these efforts should continue and by no means should ever be diminished in any form. In fact, I would add that many other entities that are part of this task force find themselves with liquidated or limited resources to be able to do these efforts, and yet the License Board continues to be a major leader in the industry. I certainly appreciate the time and the opportunity to be able to express my concern as one who chairs these task force every month and has been doing so for, as a labor organization since 1994. And we will hope that we continue these efforts. And I know that the License Board is a continuous participant of our underground economy efforts with the various other task entities that are part of it as well, too. So I look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for providing those words of encouragement and acknowledgments. Okay, let's go to item C. At this point, CSLB has a long history of successful proactive enforcement operation that would not be possible without assistance from our district attorneys and investigators, and also our local enforcement partners, who routinely accompany CSLB investigators on compliance checks and provide arm back up during undercover operations. So at this time, I'm going to, there are some people I want to recognize, and we understood that not all of our partners are here today, but we would like to take this opportunity to publicly recognize and express appreciation to a few of our law enforcement partners. We got Tom Hazelton, Tom Milner, Chris Lindholm. Actually, Tom Hazelton and Milner is from Alameda County. Chris Lindholm is El Dorado County. Jack Cooper, Gene Fahey, Mike Miller from Marin County. Andy Lewis, Napa County. Tom Sage, Jim Walsall, Mike Martin, Frank Hernandez, actually Mike Martin, all from Plaza, Amador, Calaveras counties. Frank Hernandez from Santa Clara, and Russ Howard from Santa Clara. Investigator Jeff Miller has had the opportunity to work closely with these partners, and at this time I'd like to share some experience with you. Jeff?
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Miller. I work in the SWIFT unit. I've worked for the Contractors Board for 26 years. 17 of those years have been in the SWIFT unit, doing undercover sting operations. We respond to leads from confidential informants, and we also do sweep operations, whether in the Jessup program or the LETF program or just on our own, the investigators in this unit. Our mandate, our target is combating the underground economy, which is unlicensed activity mainly, and the other very important issue is the work comp. Those licensed or unlicensed contractors that may be out there with employees that don't have benefit of workers' compensation insurance. We're able to cite and we're able to issue stop work orders. The DA investigators, there are 4 of them in this room, would be Chris, Gene, Mike, and Jimmy. These guys have worked with us for years, and it's been a privilege for me to work with these guys over the years. They've assisted us in sting operations, long planned operations, or at the drop of a hat put together operations. They'll drop what they're doing and come and back us up. And that goes for Chris, Gene, Mike, and Jimmy. All of them anytime, and those that that didn't appear that are mentioned in here. These guys are stellar individuals. Their commitment to us and the investigators in the SWIFT unit and to CSLB is absolutely outstanding. A simple phone call, if they don't have other assignments, they'll be there to get our backs. They're great guys to work with. We've had some fun. We've had some scary times, but it's all been good times. It's been great times. I can't think of anything I would rather do other than deliver pizza, but their commitment to the unit is outstanding, and I think on behalf of the investigators, on behalf of CSLB as a whole, the SWIFT investigators and the SWIFT unit, a big thank you to you guys. You guys have always been there for us. Your recognition here today is well-deserved and it's long overdue. So
Let's give them a round of applause.
Yes.
Huh? Would those four individuals come forward? Gene Fahey. Yeah. Oh, sure. Chris Lindham and Jim Walshaw and Mike Miller.
come on, dude.
This is a very important
Dancing machine.
task you've been doing, and to show that representation, I want the registrar and the chief of enforcement to come up to take a picture with us. Okay? Mike?
Right here.
Okay. Jim? Okay. And Chris? And Gene. Let's try to get the flag in here. Yes.
Yeah, by the flag here.
Yes. Yeah. It's good. We're all in? Oops.
One of these will come out.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. In your packet, let's go to item number D. Okay, this is on review and discussion of CSLB peace officers, duties and responsibilities. We're privileged to have with us today Riverside County Deputy District Attorney Human Husseina, who has had an opportunity to work closely with some of our peace officers. Mr. Husseini has played an important role in offering training to our staff, and he has provided instruction on the proper execution of the search warrant and has made himself available to assist our staff in their investigation. Mr. Husseini, would you come forward and, there you are. Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I had an opportunity, I've had a pleasure actually to work with CSLB, both with the SWIFT team and also with the peace officers. I've been asked to talk about why I believe that, why it's important that the CSLB continue to have peace officers within their ranks. Some of the stuff that I think that the peace officers would be able to bring to the table that non-sworn wouldn't be, is that they bring special individualized trainings. For instance, elder abuse cases, how to investigate them, workers' comp kind of cases. The unique training, the education that they've received in these arenas may not be the same as non-sworn that have received these kind of trainings. So they provide a more effective investigation in the cases. They are the first responders. So to me, having a peace officer respond to a complaint is someone that's going to have a little bit more training. As well as in court. People that have had more training are more comfortable in testifying, going into court more often. They are able to present the facts of the case a little bit better. They have a better understanding of what the law is to the facts. In addition, there's things that the peace officers can get that normal sworn personnel can't get at CSLB, and those are search warrants type of records. As a peace officer, you can execute search warrants, whereas non-sworn you can't. So for CSLB personnel that are investigating a case, if there are documents, bank records, medical records, things like that, they won't be able to execute the search warrant. They may be able to obtain the search warrant, but they can't execute it. So half of the battle is to get the search warrant, the other half is to actually execute it and get those documents back. Only a peace officer in the state of California can actually serve a search warrant. So without that, now CSLB has to reach out to local county peace officers to obtain whatever these documents are. The other problem is that that peace officer is now the deposit for those documents. So now you have to rely on someone else getting back to you and letting you know whether these documents ever got to them or not, and whether they got buried in all the other reports that they have. Because most likely they're not going to be as invested in the case as a peace officer is for CSLB. So having that option of having your own internal peace officers available to execute these search warrants, it creates a more flow. It's better for chain of custody as well. That way there won't be issues when we actually go to court as to where we got these documents and whether these documents have been fudged or not. The other issues that come up are statewide authority. As peace officers, they can work different counties. They can go up and down from Northern California, Southern California, wherever it may be the case, they're California peace officers. There's also the issue of workers' comps. The peace officers are probably the more appropriate people to go out and to deal with workers' comp issues, especially the stop orders. So there are different levels of enforcement, but I think a peace officer may be a better person to be able to handle these kind of things. The other thing as well is that as far as peace officers go, there is a safety issue. When non-sworn personnel go out to investigate or to interview someone, they're not armed, so they don't know who they're coming up against. And I think that's important to have someone that is a sworn personnel to be with them and to be able to provide that security and safety in case it's a suspect that has some kind of criminal background. As first responders, we may never, as a DA, I may never have an opportunity to interview this suspect, especially after they've had a chance to speak to an attorney. So as first responders, our peace officers are the best people there. They have the training. They know the right questions to ask. The other difference is that if you have a peace officer that's not CSLB, they may not know what kind of questions to ask. CSLB peace officers know the B&P code section. Most standard police officers do not even know what B&P stands for or the Business and Professional Code even exists. So that even goes with DAs as well. So having peace officers that are specialized, that are trained in this area, makes a substantial difference in the investigation. As well as responding to civilian complaints. Most civilian complaints, if reported to a local police station, may consider it civil in nature, which also creates a problem because then your victim doesn't know what to do. And they think that that's something that they have to pursue in civil court, obtain an attorney, which to them equals more money, which means that they may not even prosecute this person. This complaint may never come forward. The other thing that was discussed is once a complaint is filed, search warrants and also arrest warrants. If a warrant is issued for someone's arrest, we have to get a peace officer to go pick them up. Now, peace officers may not make this a priority case because then again it's the Business and Professions Code, so they don't have the priority for that. If CSLB has their own peace officers, they can go pick these people up and bring them to court to make them answer for the charges that we filed against them. The other aspect also is that having a peace officer that's CSLB trained, they have the right tools and techniques as a peace officer to be able to discuss the facts with the non-sworn, and then ultimately sometimes you have a situation where you may on the spot need to work a case up to get to the next higher level person. If you miss that opportunity in the beginning, we may never be able to get to the next higher level person up. So someone who's trained can ask the right questions, reach out to the local DA's office and get that moving, where someone who's not sworn may miss that opportunity. And then also, as peace officers are also the first people that we should be first responders to these kind of cases. Certain situations may arise where non-sworn may not have the proper training to respond to an emergency situation on site, where peace officers in CSLB land can coordinate with the right agencies, whether it's hazmat or whatnot, to be able to coordinate those kind of things. The training that we've provided so far with CSLB, and I'm really honored to be able to work with the men and women at CSLB, is that we provide a Prop 115 training. We provide a training about filing cases, and we are currently in the process of setting up training for search warrants on how to write them, how to execute them. And again, without peace officers, you guys can't, CSLB wouldn't be able to serve these search warrants. And overall, just having peace officers in CSLB is to coordinate statewide. We're currently working on a couple cases where it does have statewide implications, and to be able to coordinate with people up and down the state makes it a little bit easier for us, because then I don't know which peace officer to call to help us with these kind of cases. So having someone in CSLB that I can contact makes the cases move faster, more fluid, and it keeps it within a tight network of a task force that we can control, versus relying on agencies that may not be interested in helping us or may not be available to help us. So Having said that, I think it would be a detriment to CSLB to not have peace officers. If anything, I'm an advocate of having more peace officers with CSLB. I think it's a very valuable thing, and the way CSLB is heading right now is fantastic. You guys are probably one of the more active agencies that I've worked with under the Department of Consumer Affairs, so it's my honor to work with you folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hosseinian, for that very important information, and I'm sure it's very informative to the entire board, so thank you for your time. And now we're going to have Chief Enforcement Dave Folk to discuss the roles and responsibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. If we could turn to page 2 in your committee packet, I'd like to thank Board Member Ed Lang and Board Member Pastor Herrera for taking the time to swear in our 2 latest peace officers. Actually, our 3 latest peace officers. You'll find them on page 2 and 3. And we currently have 10 of our 12 allocated positions filled. We have some highlights on page 4, but before I touch on those highlights, I want to just echo what's been said here and thank the DA investigators who have partnered with us for many years. As Mr. Hosseinian pointed out, our peace officers are instrumental in performing surveillance and working with prosecutors on identifying those individuals that have warrants for their arrest. Because CSLB peace officers do not carry a firearm, they're going to rely on their law enforcement partners to back them up and to participate when an arrest is made. But what's critical is that they have those relationships in place, that the prosecutors throughout the state know they can rely on the expertise of a CSLB peace officer. Many of our peace officers are relatively new, and so there has been a little, somewhat of a learning curve. But I am very pleased to report that I've had monthly meetings with all of them. And what we've talked about is how they can become recognized experts statewide in the investigation of elder abuse and white-collar crime. Now, a lot of the investigations that they currently have underway, we can't disclose because they're still ongoing. But I did want to touch on 3 of the highlights that you'll see in the packet, starting on page 4. And the first one is the Avi Goslin and the service and repair, and also the telemarketing operation that he put together that was clearly designed to target individuals for high-priced not service and repair, but home remodeling projects, and doing that by using qualifiers who weren't actively involved. You'll see that he's been arrested and he's facing 51 felony counts. Grand jury was convened to look at this, and the grand jury added additional charges, which I found very interesting. And also the qualifiers that were involved in this as far as putting these licenses in business, they've pled out 2 felony charges that include conspiracy. But it's through the efforts of a CSLB peace officer that really lent itself to this happening. And on the bottom of page 4, we have Sam Choi. Deidre Green, she was a parole officer, didn't have a lot of experience investigating white-collar crime, but she has a lot of enthusiasm for these type of investigations, and you'll see the highlight. Mr. Choi was revoked. He didn't pay his arbitration award. He didn't want to pay the money owed a consumer, but that didn't stop him. He continued to go out and contract, falsely using a license number, that being his revoked license. And you'll see that he's now facing criminal charges, and because of her experience that she's gained here, she's able to make that referral to the DA and ask that it be filed for grand theft, for elder abuse. And prior to having the training that the peace officers have obtained, you would see a lot of these cases, similar to Mr. Choi, that was simply dealt with administratively. And yet the acts that they've committed clearly warrant a criminal referral. We have Vaki Tupo on page 5, and he's kind of interesting in that he got something out of Riverside County. I'm not sure, if you're familiar with that, but I am. He got 180 days, and as I understand this, it was for home confinement, or he had an ankle bracelet on. Well, he got his ankle bracelet taken off in October, and he went right back out and started doing the same thing again. So again, it takes the dedication, though, of somebody that's looking at these cases, not for an administrative remedy, but looking at the criminal element and putting the time into it that will encourage the DA to file on the case. There are 58 counties in the state. We're so fortunate to have a very positive relationship with Riverside County and many other counties, but we don't have that same relationship in all counties. And so we have to do what we can to, one, educate and train our staff, but also to make it known to the DAs that they benefit when they prosecute these kind of cases, that when you have a victim that's 90 years old and has lost everything, that's a serious problem. And if they're not licensed, there's no bond to go after, it's very unlikely they're going to get restitution. And if we continue to treat the unlicensed practice cases administratively, well, there's not a mechanism in place to get restitution for victims. There can be a restitution hearing and a criminal filing. We're very fortunate to have with us today Joseph Martinez, who is fortunate in some ways that he works in Sacramento, but he may tell you that it's also unfortunate because he ventures past my office, so I give him lots of assignments. But Joseph's going to talk about how he made the transition from a police officer to a peace officer here at the Contractors Board and the difference in the type of investigations. So, Joseph?
Thank you, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Joseph Martinez. I'm with the I'm an enforcement representative to peace officer with the Contractors State License Board. I've been employed here at the Contractors Board for 3 years and a peace officer for 2 years. I just want to take this opportunity to share my experience and my transition from being employed as a police officer with the Stockton Police Department to being employed as a peace officer with the Contractors State License Board. When I was a police officer with the Stockton Police Department, my primary responsibility was to investigate public violations, to arrest, and to also book for those public offenses. And there was not a whole lot of time for peace officers to investigate complex or white-collar crimes. A lot of cases, these investigations were impersonal, talk to victims, and we'd only get 5 to 45 minutes max to investigate from start to finish. And a lot of times those white-collar crimes would be forwarded or routed to the police detectives. And here as a peace officer with the Contractor State License Board, I investigate complex investigations, which is at the same or similar level of a police detective with respect to jurisdiction. Here at the board, as a peace officer, I do my interviews. I also write search warrants. I serve search warrants. I also work very closely with the district attorney's office to go forward to try to get a conviction for criminal offenses, in particular to felonies, and also for restitution for the interest of consumer protection. Now, in my training and my experience as a peace officer here with the Contractors Board, I'm able to have that knowledge to be able to proceed with those charges, felony charges, and to get that restitution for the public. Also with that, I'm able to work with the DA in order to proceed forward with the appropriate type of conviction that's needed for that investigation. Now recently, I had filed a case with the Costa Contra District Attorney's Office for an financial elder abuse case. And you can read that more on page 5 at the bottom. What happened in this case, in this investigation, there was the unlicensed contractor who solicited electrical work for $2,450. And during that electrical project, basically talked to the homeowner and convinced her that there was more work that was needed for a total contract price of $39,026. And when I sent an industry expert out there to basically assess the value of the work, they determined that the value was $2,045, I believe. And with that, I was able to file that case to the Contra Costa District Attorney's Office to proceed with violations of financial elder abuse, also theft by false pretense, and misdemeanor charges as well for unlicensed contracting and failure to secure workers' comp. Now, I believe it's much easier in this role as a peace officer to have that knowledge and background, to work with the district attorneys, and to be able to get those types of violations that's important and relevant to the charges. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, Thank you for
Could
your
I
comment.
ask, could I ask you a question,
Of
Joseph?
course.
Do you think that it's critical to have officer status to do your job properly? Do you think it's really, it's very helpful to you?
Yes, sir, I do. In fact, there's a lot of training that's given, not only in basic training, but continued training, with a focus of that type of conviction, looking for felonies, and also knowing what type of information, what questions to ask to get those specific violations. Yes.
Joseph, if you would touch on how, there's an example, you're investigating an elder abuse case. There is certain information that you could obtain as a peace officer that would not be able to be obtained by a non-sworn person. If you could explain how that would work, and also how you've had some success in videotaping the statements.
Oh, sure. As a peace officer, we're able to obtain bank records, medical records, information that's very confidential. We can also obtain records through search warrants. We're able to evaluate those records for the DA to be able to explain what those violations are. On top of that, we also are able to show through videotaping a statement what the mental capacity or what the victim's health status is based on their statement on video. And that can also be useful for those elder abuse cases. Even though it can't be the statement itself that's brought forward in court, it can show that medical condition at least.
So you'd say the power of being a peace officer allows you to be more effective to serve the people of the state of California and to do a more thorough job enforcing the laws of the state as well.
Yes, sir. It does allow us to be more efficient and more effective in obtaining those charges and investigating these cases.
I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Any more comments? Thank you, Joseph.
Thanks.
Okay, let's go to agenda item E. This review and discussion of enforcement representative authority to issue a written notice to appear in criminal court. Chief Folk, would you discuss that, please?
Thank you. Just to summarize, the way we've used the peace officers has been in conjunction with other law enforcement personnel. In many cases, they're doing the reactive investigations. They're also doing follow-up on stop orders. I just wanted to mention that stop order, what it does is it prohibits the employment of labor without a workers' comp policy, and they're doing some follow-up on that. But it's different than what our SWIFT unit are performing, and that's what I wanted to touch on here this afternoon. As I mentioned, we have 12 allocated peace officer positions. We have approximately 30 non-sworn enforcement representatives that are part of the SWIFT unit. And on page, I'm not sure if it's numbered, but I guess page 2, I think it is. Page 1, actually. It's a history of the Contractors Board's proactive enforcement unit. Wanted to thank Rick Lopes for putting this together. It's very informative. But you'll see in 1989, Business and Professions Code section 7011.4 was enacted. And this is real important because this gave the authority to non-sworn personnel to issue a notice to appear. And I'm going to explain why that's important. If we're working a consumer complaint, and often you'll have more than one victim, you may have a number of consumers that you're going to interview and have them authenticate the evidence that would support the unlicensed practice. Now, when you go down to file that case with your local prosecutor, they may or may not be interested. And many of them, and I'm not referring at all to Riverside County, because I'll take it, or City of LA, so let's get that clear. But many of them will decline that referral because it could result in a jury trial. You may have to bring in numerous witnesses. The way the SWIFT unit has been effective is because they simply call based on an advertisement and invite somebody to come out to an undercover sting site. When they arrive, the transaction is recorded. First thing they're going to ask for is a copy of a business card. They'll give a business card. Well, that's a misdemeanor because they don't have a license. You can't advertise unless you have a valid license for anything over, let's say, $500. It's actually $500. Second thing is they're going to have them bid the job, probably write something down as to the price, and they're going to submit that as a contract. Again, if it's over $500, a license is required. And the third part of this, they'll generally ask, are you licensed? And most of them are going to say yes or no. Most say no. They're honest about that at least. At that point, they are detained. They may be placed under arrest at the jurisdiction's discretion, local law enforcement's discretion, but they're given a notice to appear in court. We've already met with the DA. We've established a court date, and they're given really a citation, and they're said, you will appear on this date. Our success rate in getting a successful prosecution is about 98%. Some of you were down in Orange County, where the Orange County DA made a presentation to you, and their success rate is 100%. It's because there's really no getting out of this when it's all been recorded, so it's very effective. Now, in conducting those stings, they do not need to be sworn themselves because they have the law enforcement partners present. And the reason it works so well that our staff at the Contractors Board have this authority is they can testify to that at the time of trial. So what we really need is our law enforcement backup to be there for security, also to run the wants and warrants, but they don't have to take an active part in writing the reports or signing the NTA and later testifying to that in court. And that's why, if you read our 2012 accomplishment report, we had over 1,000 cases successfully prosecuted for unlicensed practice. This authority is specific to, let me explain, rephrase that. The NTA authority is specific to unlicensed practice. So if you're unlicensed, you come out, we have the authority to issue an NTA. It's been very successful. We're hoping that we could perhaps expand that and have one of our investigators in our investigative centers have the same authority, because what's troubling is that those cases that are filed by consumers in our investigative centers are generally handled administratively. The last time we ran our citation civil penalty statistics, we found that 20% of those fines are paid. 80% are not paid. It's not a real effective tool in combating the underground economy. The theory is that if we had an assigned investigator in an investigative center, they'd be able to call out that contractor that related to that consumer complaint, have them bid at the site, and then if they've been arrested, after they've been Mirandized, ask them about the consumer complaint. And we believe they'd be willing to talk about it, and if so, you'd have that on the audio recording, and you could file both cases with the DA. You'd have the NTA for what happened in your presence, but you'd also have the companion consumer complaint that would be referred to the prosecutor. So we've treated this tool in a very careful fashion, not aware of any problems that have arisen from it. The DAs have supported it, and we would hope that we would be able to continue to conduct stings and issue the NTAs. And Mr. Husseinian, would you want to comment on that at all?
Absolutely. The SWIFT project has been very effective in our county as well. I'm not sure what our conviction rate is, but I've gone out personally on some of these SWIFT operations before, and as we work closer together with CSLB, it's become a very well greased. I mean, it's lined up. They have them literally come in every 15, 20 minutes. They have set questions they ask. They've already worked with us. We've already had set questions we want asked. And the way that Dave was talking about is it does secure that prosecution because everything's audio recorded. I can't tell you, I mean, as far as my office or any other prosecutor you talk to, anytime you have something audio recorded, it's kind of hard to refute that in court, because that's like what you just hit the play on the tape machine, and there's their voice admitting to whatever it is that they've done, whether it's the unlicensed activity there or, like Dave was talking about, a consumer complaint that you can also ask them about. So for me, working closely with the SWIFT personnel has been, like I said, I don't know what our conviction rate is, but I think we've prosecuted everyone that, all the notices to appear, I think we've prosecuted all of them. I don't think a single one has gone to trial because there's nothing to refute. There's no legal issues. There's no factual issues. So, and the only reason we've been able to do that is because we've been working closely with SWIFT and also with the peace officers. And I think the one thing that I did leave out is that sometimes as DAs or DA investigators, we may not be available to the non-sworn personnel. So having your own peace officers in-house can help in understanding, okay, here's my case, what do you think? it's something that you can bounce off someone that has a little bit more experience in the investigative world versus just an administrative citation. Because sometimes administrative citations are not going to stop the activity. You may have to take it to a criminal level. And having a peace officer to discuss those kind of things with is very valuable to, I think, CSLB, so that as first responders, you do ask the right questions up front, and that's what SWIFT's done for us.
Good. Thanks for the supporting information on that.
Absolutely. It's
I
my
really appreciate
pleasure.
that. I'd like to, again, thank Rick Lope for putting this history of investigating unlicensed activity. This is fantastic. So I know the board members, at least the committee members, appreciate this history of where we came from. Okay. In the audience today, we have a governmental relations advocate, Phil Vermeulen, and the Director of State Council of Laborers, Jose Mejia. They will be discussing how CSLB has been able to effectively partner with labor and construction groups to battle the underground economy. Let us hear it. Where are you? Phil? Okay.
If I might, Phil, both you and Jose have been really instrumental in this whole public works arena, our next agenda item. And I thought it'd be helpful for the committee to understand how long we've been working to try and deal with these public works problems that you, representing the construction industry, have seen, and you, labor, how it's affected your groups, and how important this is to you that we'll be able to provide this information to the industry and other agencies in this whole public works arena, because it's really something that the board hasn't, we just started like a few years ago, and you two are some of the leaders in pushing us to do this. So would you mind commenting on that?
Thank you, Steve. You know, it's a mutual thing. It's obviously, as I mentioned earlier, through our efforts of the task force, but specifically when we have, and by the way, the License Board has done an outstanding job in promoting legislation along these lines in the public works arena that basically benefits the entire industry as a whole. And it's certainly not done exclusively by myself or one of our associations, but it's through a variety of other folks that are not here in the room, from various other trades and from various other associations as well too. And primarily, it's hard for the legislature, to be quite frank with you, regardless of party lines or who's ever in the governor's office, to be able to say no to aggressive efforts undertaken by the board. The enforcement element that we're talking about, we start talking about legislation that basically starts going after the bad guys in the construction industry, in public works specifically. It was said earlier in Dave's report having to do with workers' comp, it's huge. Unlicensed activity, the workers' comp issue is huge. It puts a lot of contractors, regardless of union status for that matter, at a complete disadvantage if you don't have these laws to be able to tackle this unfairness. I know that I work very closely with Phil, who represents one of our associations in engineering area, but I tell you, it's something that's across the board. And you guys have taken a complete lead on this whole thing, and it's been fantastic. I failed to mention earlier, some of the participants of our task force that has been a part of this whole effort in the public works arena is a diverse group. I mean, when you got the Chamber of Commerce, when you got some of the other labor organizations that are part of this, when you have some of these compliance entities that for many, many years have monitored the prevailing wage laws, the public contract codes throughout the years, it's huge. Mm-hmm. And obviously, when you start talking about the taxpayers' dollars being engaged, it's in the best interest that these efforts continue aggressively, because after all, they're the ones that pay the bill. But it certainly has been my pleasure, as I bring a lot of other folks to the table, to discuss this. Last month at my breakfast meeting, we had one of the senators that carried, I believe it was 4 pieces of legislation on behalf of the License Board to be able to combat the underground economy and to be able to enhance prevailing wage laws and be able to enforce them in a more efficient way. And again, it's not just labor laws. I think it's something to be able to tackle all the the issues that we have with collecting much-needed resources to the state coffers. It's amazing what the efforts that are undertaken by the board.
Thanks, Jose. That was one of those rare times, that was a Kodak moment when Steve Sands and company caught me speechless, because I had no warning that I was coming up here. But thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here today with Jose and all my colleagues. It's been an ongoing battle. This has been one of my pet peeves for a long time, the public works arena. We have a lot of good contractors and a lot of hard workers there, where we have these public agencies that are not playing by the rules. They're overwhelmed as they are. Somehow we've got to get the message that they got to be checking for licenses, making sure that everything is by the books. And it's for too long, it hasn't been going that way. So we're always striving to try to figure out new ways, working together as a team with the board on legislation with the other members of the industry, such as Mr. Chris Walker sitting here from SMACNA. It's a continual team effort to try to figure out ways that we can combat this problem to help out the good guys out there, because the industry funds desperately need the support of the public works arena. And we have hopes and dreams. There's over $500 billion worth of infrastructure needs in California. So the demand is out there. We just got to make sure that everybody's playing by the rules. And together, working with the board and my colleagues, hopefully we can battle it and keep winning. So keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil and Jose, for those comments. Appreciate that. Let's go to item number F. It's the disclosure of CSLB of partnering agencies' disciplinary action. And that was slide on that first. Yeah. Okay, we do have a PowerPoint on this.
For a little background, approximately 2 years ago, the board approved the development of a public works unit. Prior to that, we rarely investigated public works complaints, but we were somewhat shocked to find out just how many contractors in the public works arena are cheating in some way. And a lot of them are cheating their employees. They're not paying prevailing wage, they're underreporting their workers' comp. They may well be licensed. The volume of work has been so great that we were not able to handle it with the 1.5 investigators assigned to the project. We've, in the last 60 days, hired 2 more investigators, but there is still too much work. We attend meetings and we hear from these awarding agencies that they're continuing to hire the same problem contractors. And many of you on the board and in attendance today are experts in contracting public works jobs. You have more expertise than I do, but it's my understanding that in most cases, the awarding agency has to take the lowest responsible bidder, and this can be a real problem when they don't, an awarding agency does not have pre-qualifying criteria or is duped by a licensee into believing they're qualified to do the job. But yet it's a struggle when you're sitting around a table and they're all talking about the same contractors, they made the same mistake. So I'd like to thank the board members for unanimously approving this program where we can disclose an action taken by another government agency, and that was approved on September 6, 2013. And it's just a real basic premise that if a contractor has been debarred or owes wages to employees and that information is already disclosed by another government agency, it should be available by link on the CSLB website. Also, we've worked very closely with Caltrans and the problems that they've had with egregious offenders. We'll talk a bit more about that in the future. But right now, we're looking really at three main areas. A contractor that's been debarred, they are not able to work in for that city, for that county, or for that state government agency, yet they're still out there getting work because the information is not known, or the civil wage and penalty assessments where employees are owed. It's not uncommon to be owed hundreds of thousands of dollars, and yet the contractor is still out there in the marketplace, still out there getting work. And then we have Caltrans, where they have contractors that they've hired that haven't paid, their subcontractors have not paid their workers. And that information, again, is available. And without this disclosure program, in the past, we would have to write an administrative legal action, which is time-consuming and great expense to the board. And this is our screen print for an example of what you'd find if you were checking a contractor out that had a problem with Caltrans. You simply put the license number in as you would for any other licensee, and information will come up. And it's, you know, we've worked very closely with DCA's legal department to make sure that the language is acceptable for this program. But it basically is under the complaint disclosure that there is a action taken by another government agency that you need to perform due diligence and researching that yourself. We're not saying that it's true or not, but we are saying that it's available somewhere else. It's kind of hard to read this, but the language is CSLB is aware of a partnering or of a potential stop notice filed with Caltrans. And I want to thank our board member, Linda Clifford, for meeting with me and providing me some direction on how to address this issue, because I learned a lot through the process. Going into this, I thought that Caltrans filed the stop notices. Not true. They're filed by others, and it's a regular occurrence that a stop notice is filed. We don't want to link to Caltrans for a general stop notice. This morning, we had the opportunity to talk to Angela Schell. She's the chief of Caltrans Contract Compliance Department, and she provided some good examples of when they would suggest somebody would be disclosed on the CSLB website. And one example is the contract price was $777,000, and yet stop notices have been filed for just under $2 million. That's a problem. You know, it's only going to be the egregious offenders. When we're talking about Caltrans, the only ones that we're going to link to are going to be those that Caltrans has brought to our attention and told us, we have a problem contractor here. They're not paying their subs. They're not paying their employees. There are stop notices, and generally there's going to be a lawsuit tied to it that the public needs to be aware of. So it's going to be used on a limited basis and only when appropriate. Sure. And this is the disclosure that you're leaving the CSLB website, and you're going to have to take that into consideration. You're going to somebody outside CSLB. Just a legal disclaimer. An example of a stop notice. We have two new ones though that just came in. Again, the one I was talking about, and another one where a contractor has suddenly received numerous stop notices because nobody's being paid. And that's a problem. When the payment is overdue, and I think the second case, 6 months, they've apparently diverted the funds, are not paying anybody, that's a problem. This will be an example of what we call the CWAP, or the Civil Wage and Penalty Assessment. And again, it's a potential, whereas the Caltrans is a potential violation that is demonstrated by the stop notice. For this, it's a labor code violation. Now, what we've been doing for the last 2 years is those civil wage and penalty assessments that result in a debarment by the labor commissioner, we've taken action on all of them. They're all accusations. It's very expensive, very time consuming. But what we haven't been addressing is all of those civil wage and penalty assessments that are readily available on the labor commissioner's website. We're not proposing that we're going to disclose all of them, but we are proposing that those that are the most egregious, where you have employees owed a lot of money and we're not going to take our own administrative action with or against, we will disclose those. And again, the same disclaimer. And what you're seeing here is what the public would see. If they went in and put the license number in, this is what they're going to see. There's something separate to this, and I don't want to bore you with it, but it's what we call our Teal system. It was kind of funny when it went over to Caltrans, Angela said, "I can't believe you're still using Teal." It's like, Raju could probably explain that. I know we're moving to Breeze or something new, but she was kind of surprised. But there's a lot of safeguards with this program. There's language that comes up. So if an internal employee was putting the license number in, before they'd give any information out in the call center, a window comes up, and they have to say, "Yes, I understand, it's just a potential violation." They have language that they'll use to explain to the caller, or even on our automated voice response system, as to the potential violation that exists elsewhere. And this is an example of the civil wage and penalty assessments that is right off of the Labor Commissioner's website. So all you do is you'd be directed to go to that website, you click on it, the information comes down. And here's the IVR script, and this is off the 800 number. So we're real excited that you've approved this. We wanted to show it to you one final time. As it stands today, we're proposing that within the next 2 or 3 weeks, Raju, I think we'd be able to start putting some of the stop notices and the civil wage and penalty assessments on the CSLB website. For those debarments, we've taken action administratively already against all of the debarments that were implemented by the Labor Commissioner. And we need to have a meeting with the League of California Cities to develop a program or a protocol to disclose those debarments by the cities, like San Jose or even Bakersfield, I think, has expressed some interest. So we could do that, but we have to work out the logistics of it. And that's it. So any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we proceed, I apologize, new kid on the block, unsure of the protocol, so I'll display my naivete once and for all.
Okay.
And that is, generally speaking, does the committee and or the board allow for public comment after each item, or is that?
Yes.
Okay, I just,
Matter
because we
of fact,
haven't heard
yes.
any, maybe, like I said, I'm new on the block, and I don't know
That's
how
fine.
these things work, so I
And we do.
apologize.
We do. I've been remiss, but anyone that have comments concerning the presentation a few minutes ago, please do. Any board members, public? Okay, hearing and seeing none. I'd like to echo a thank you also to Ms. Clifford for taking the time out to schedule and come over and work with enforcement, since she's an expert in the Caltrans area. That's fantastic. Thank you. Let's go to any comments. Item G. Also, I'd like to thank the enforcement and CSLB staff and IT department for just really working vigorously to get this out, because we approved it on September 6th, and it's working now. That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, under G, let's see, yeah. Dave, will you provide enforcement updates?
Thank you, Mr. Lang. If we turn to page 2, I want to provide just a brief, provide some brief highlights regarding the intake mediation centers. What we've recently done is we've hired, or reclassed, I should say, 2 positions to the Enforcement Rep 1 position for the Intake Mediation Center. And the idea is that we're going to have these 2 investigators focused on the workers' comp and permit issues. They don't generally require a field visit because the information is coming to us. And so we're real excited about that. You'll see up at the top of the page, from July 2012 through August 2013, $10 million in restitution has been returned to injured parties. That remains the focus of the Intake Mediation Center, but also to look at these other issues that are quite evident when we receive a consumer complaint. The goal is to get the consumer or the injured party made whole, but also to correct the business practice when we have someone that's not getting permits, or there's clear evidence they have employees and they don't have workers' comp. through the Intake Mediation Center and the trained staff that we have at the consumer service representative level, we're able to address those issues. In the middle of the page, we've been working with a PG&E partnership. And I want to take this opportunity, though, to recognize the manager of the statewide intake mediation centers. If he's paying any attention, Scott Weber, stand up. So Scott's over the 2 intake mediation centers, and he's done a great job, one with the IMC pilot program, but also in working with PG&E to figure out methods to investigate and take action on those contractors that are not calling before they dig. And it's been a continuing problem. We recently had a meeting with PG&E, and they stated that their lines are hit 7 times a day. Not only is it dangerous for the employees, but it's dangerous for the public. You could have a gas explosion, you could lose power, all kinds of things can happen. And recently, another, what we call what's referred to as an investor-owned utility, Sempra Energy Utilities, has become aware of the success we've had with PG&E, and now they want to enjoy similar success and to partner with us in taking action when appropriate. And it's not that we take action on all these cases. We're really looking at having the financial issues resolved and the business practice corrected. But when it's appropriate and we have someone that's likely to reoffend, we do issue an administrative action, which is generally an administrative citation. If you look on page 3, something else that Scott Weber's been really in tune with, and that's the workers' comp issues. And you look at the numbers, over 1,000 exemptions canceled. A consumer's filed a complaint, and they put right in the complaint form that the contractor had employees, but yet there's an exemption on file. And for the most part, these contractors will readily admit it when you call them up. Say, yes, your employee did a bad job on this project, didn't he or she? And they'll say, absolutely. Problem, you don't have any workers' comp. How can you have an employee? And so it's not that we could take action on all these, but we can cancel their exemption. And with Scott and working with Karen Robinson, the chief of licensing, have implemented a suspension program that doesn't require any administrative action or any cost to the board. It's simply that it's been identified that you have workers, you have no workers' comp policy. You've got 30 days to obtain one. If you do not, your license will be suspended by automation of law. So it's been very effective. You'll see that we have 388 have obtained policies, and those that don't, they become targets for a sting or a referral to one of our partners. Generally, that's going to be the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement for having employees and no workers' comp, or EDD for a tax audit. On page 4, just a quick rundown of the board's objectives, and that is to settle with restitution injured parties more than 30% of the complaints, and that has been achieved. You'll see 40%. And appropriately dispositioning 70% of the licensee complaints, and that's within 60 days of receipt. And you'll see that that's being accomplished just about 70% of the time. We have an update on Home Depot. We're looking for ways to always partner with private businesses, and Home Depot is no exception. We have had some, I would say, a little bit of turbulence working with them, so we offered to meet, and they brought in attorneys and their representatives from Georgia and Southern California. We had a great meeting, and you'll see the highlights of that meeting. And what we did is we established a protocol on how we're going to resolve complaints. If they receive a complaint, they need to do what they can to take care of it. There are some situations where we might want to look into it further, but for the most part, we want to work together. They have a very good program to resolve complaints before they escalate. But what's key at the Contractors Board is that we have dedicated staff that know who to contact. You can't just simply make a phone call or send a letter to Georgia. You need to know who you can pick up the phone, who you can speak with to get that complaint resolved. And just...
Oh, Dave, before you continue there, I know it's a great farm for Home Depot. Have your staff been looking into Lowe's or any other the big departments?
Well, we absolutely could. We haven't, but we sure could. So would you like for us to do that?
What does the committee think? I think Lowe's should be a similar project. We have one for Home Depot. The process should be about the same. It's just the contact information.
Did we put Home Depot in because there were a lot of complaints?
Well, that's where it started from. Yes. You're right. You give some background on how that
Sure.
started? Yeah.
Well, we have cited, we've taken administrative action against Home Depot, and so we don't want that to occur. They're doing 700, 800 jobs, a day or something in California. It's an incredible amount of work, and we know they're going to get some complaints. But we also looked at it as a way to partner with them on getting information out to the public. So we're still looking at that. Other states have implemented, they've got kiosks in Home Depot as an example, where you can get permits at the counter, at the contractor's counter. We'd like to think about doing something like that. The reason we put Home Depot in here is we did issue a citation that was settled a couple of months ago. And we want to avoid that from happening in the future. We could meet with Lowe's and find out if there's any concerns that they have. I'm not aware of any offhand. And I want to be clear that with Home Depot, we're not aware of any ongoing concerns either. It's just that we had a situation where we were not able to effectively reach them, and it escalated into a citation, and we don't want that to happen. And we could make the same outreach to Lowe's to make sure we have that same communication.
Okay, that sounds, okay, you have the
I'd like to turn to,
go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to page 12. You'll see that prior to that, we have an update on some, I think, very interesting cases. We also have an update on the Public Works Unit. But on page 12, for those of you that were at the Orange County Board meeting, you had the opportunity to meet Nora Urias, and I asked that we put a photograph of Nora in this packet because you may recall that Nora was the one that had, well, there was two things. I guess she said a prayer every day before she got in her vehicle.
Yeah.
But she also had the tow truck driver on her speed dial. And so I'm very pleased to report that's no longer the case. I want to thank everybody that came out in support of us obtaining new vehicles. There were 25 allocated, I believe 12 or 15? 15 have been delivered at this point. We're still waiting on some Priuses. But the way that it's worked is we had support from the board, from our executive office, the Department of Consumer Affairs, and also at the agency level. I just want to thank everybody for getting behind it. We had a plan where we needed to be in 70% compliance with general services requirements. We did it. The staff got on board, and that requires that they share a vehicle. So you have 2 to 3 investigators that are sharing one car. But the good news is, I mean, that's working for them, but the good news is the cars are now reliable.
Excellent. That's a great landmark on those vehicles, and I think everyone that's been involved in that from day one to trying to get this done. So I think that deserves a round of applause. Okay.
On the bottom of page 14, we have an update. Scott Crothers is a plumbing contractor in Southern California. I wish he was here with us today, but we have put together a program in Santa Monica to look at material suppliers and who they're supplying material to, but also to follow up on those that are caught in the sting to see if they're still in business. And we did conduct that sting a couple of weeks ago, and you'll see the highlight of it. But I'm looking forward to following up to see how many of these contractors remain in business. We also have some good footage from the material supply houses that Tom O'Hare, who's on the computer right now, went down to Santa Monica, and I know you got some good video. There may be a way that we can use that for our outreach efforts. So I just wanted to follow up because that was an objective of the board, to work with Scott Crothers in putting that operation together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, after page 16, we have a new complaint form, and this suggestion came to us from the California Landscape Contractors Association, Larry Rolfus to be specific, who said you have complaint forms for consumers that have hired contractors, you have them for filing against individuals or businesses that may not have got a permit, and also if you have an active job site, but you don't have a complaint form when someone's simply advertising unlicensed and you don't know where they're working. So with the help of our Public Affairs Office, we've developed this complaint form. We are asking the committee just review it. I don't know that it has to go to the full board. It's up to the committee, I guess. But if you're comfortable with it, you know, our goal would be for our Public Affairs Office to post this on the website.
Okay. At this time, committee, I know you had it in your packet, and the form is straightforward. It does simplify things. Would you like to see this form be added to the CSLB website?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the form as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we adopt the format that's presented on this advertising complaint form. You have time to consider, or there's any unreadiness at this time? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, on page 17, we have an update regarding Butte County. For those of you that have been on the board for a while or been attending these meetings, you know that we've worked very closely with our partners in Butte County. And we certainly have a partner in the second to the front row, and Nancy Springer, our new board member. So,
Good.
you know, just some of the quick highlights. Nancy, maybe it was a year, probably 2 years ago now, she's allowed one of our investigators to work out of her office. She's also been very instrumental in developing various programs. But in addition to Nancy, we've had industry partners. We have Larry back with us today, and I guess Rick Clements had to go to the VA hospital, so that's unfortunate. But you can read about some of the successes we have. But the point of discussing this, discussing Butte County today, is to determine if you're in support of the Volunteer Industry Expert Program that we talked about at the last strategic planning session. And what this would do is, it would be specific to Butte County. We would be paying our industry experts to go out and identify unlicensed or uninsured practice. We're proposing that we hire a retired annuitant named Hal Haneke, who's a retired, I believe, a CHP lieutenant. He's with us here today. And he would be the one that would respond, and ideally with the DA investigator that we generally work with in Butte County, to address these violations. So it's a little bit different approach to addressing unlicensed practice. We'd be using our partners to be our eyes and ears out in the field and simply report it. And we got this idea off of something that I think, well, that Nancy and the sheriff in Butte County were instrumental in. That was training of these sheriff volunteers. I mean, they're out every day, they're driving around, they're uncovering various violations, they're a conduit to the sworn law enforcement personnel, and we're wanting to consider something similar with this Volunteer Industry Expert Program. And I would ask Larry if you want to say a few words about it, because this idea came from Larry and Rick Clements.
Mostly from Rick.
Yeah.
He pushes pretty good. I'd like to thank you all for having me come in here for a few minutes. My frustration, I guess it's been over 4 years ago, we were in Monterey at one of the meetings, and we recognized that during the tough economy, there wasn't the resources for the Contractor State License Board to go out and police all these different areas. So we thought, well, you know, being contractors, maybe we can be helpful, because we know who the people are, we're in the communities, we're driving out, we're actively working, we run across these things all the time. So the last few years here, we have stumbled across many different situations where there was illegal activity that we knew of going on. So we would make a call to the board and tell them what we knew, usually left it on a message, and a day or two later we get a call back. By then the activity is done. You know, you can try and put it back together, but not likely. So, you know, Rick had come up with an idea that maybe as a volunteer industry expert, he could get a phone call from a contractor such as myself saying, hey, I saw so-and-so on the street over here. I believe there's no permit. I know he's working without workers' comp, or maybe he doesn't have a license. And then he would respond rapidly to the site, gather as much information as he could, and then hand it on to the person who would carry it farther down the line. Our biggest problem is getting a response to these things, because in my case, you know, I do swimming pool finishes. You know, that's a 3 or 4 hour project, and they're gone. And so it has to be quick, otherwise you're going to come back and see a pool that's full of water and nobody knows anything about anything. So it's just a way to kind of expedite this. We're in an area where it's not like Sacramento where you got a big concentration. As we're, you know, Redding, Butte County, you know, Shasta County, we're outlying areas, and I think we're probably more familiar with those areas than anybody from here would be. You know, so we could get there. We know who the players are. Like some of the stuff I heard here today, you know, we've got contractors that they're always the ones that are doing it. We follow them, we know they're doing it. We're watching them, we're seeing it. Their employees are communicating with my employees, so we know exactly what's going on. But by the time we get a return call from the board, it's too late. That activity is over. They've moved on to another job. So catching them is a little bit difficult, and when we do, it needs to be a fairly quick response. Otherwise, nothing's going to come of it.
Very good.
So I think Rick's got a pretty good idea going on, and I think, you know, it would be a way to help you guys get some of this stuff. And in all these cases, I think some of these guys are major offenders. What I'm hearing today, I bet you it started with just the small stuff. You know, they test the waters. Well, if I can get away with this, you know, then I'll see what I can do next. So if we can kind of catch these guys at some of the smaller infractions and you know, do what can be done with them, maybe they'll start getting a little concerned that there's more of a presence out there from the board that they think twice about going farther with it.
That's great. Thank you, Larry.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. We need more volunteer efforts like that, and appreciate you sharing it with us today. Any comments on this section, Agenda G, Enforcement Program Update? And if anyone had any last-minute thoughts, please come forward. If not, let's go to H, which says adjournment is near. Any comments before we adjourn? If not,
Can I make
Yes.
one comment?
Please.
I think we need to, can we go back to the last agenda item? Do we need approval of that from the board, don't we? So we can get this moving, right? That's
which one was that one?
Do you need that for the volunteer?
Yeah, the pilot program?
This one here.
We need to have committee approval for that.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
I'd like to make the motion.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, motion at the risk of being the most unpopular guy in this room,
Okay.
new kid on the block, it would be my considered advice that this item is not properly agendized for action by the time of this committee. I understand that this committee has in its preamble that action may be taken on any item on the agenda, whether or not it's indicated for action. But this pilot program certainly has meritorious benefits. I'm not commenting on the benefits at all, but it's really not contemplated that the committee would take this action by reading the agenda.
Can we refer to the full board?
You
For action?
couldn't, since what this committee could do is direct staff to prepare a presentation for consideration at the board at its next meeting. But for the committee to take action on and of itself, I would respectfully suggest that it should have been agendized.
Counselor, don't ever apologize for doing your job when I'm involved, because I do not want to ever wear a Gray Bar Hotel attire.
Me neither.
Because vertical stripes do not look good on fat people.
Yeah.
So I'd like to
we
make the
agree.
motion that we go ahead and direct staff to prepare a
Item for the agenda.
item for agenda for the full board.
Thank you for putting up with me, Mr. Lamb.
Oh,
Yeah.
my pleasure. Welcome to the board. We love you already. At least I
It's
do.
been properly moved and second. That's, the staff will prepare this item for the board, agenda for the board. You have time to consider. Are there any objections? Okay, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, and opposes? Motion carried. Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none and seeing none, meeting adjourned. Oh, yeah, thank you. That was thrown there, but you're right, it should be agendized, yeah.